Good morning, everyone. Happy Father's Day to all fathers and father figures out there. So today's reading, there's something that caught my ear as Christy was reading it. And it says that divine blessings are not common in this world. In fact, they are extraordinary. And when it comes, I should give it the highest priority. That's an odd thing to say, isn't it? Because on the face of it, it seems to imply that out of, say, every 1 billion prayers or 1 trillion prayers, one of them is answered. And when that happens, you have to hold on to it. That's kind of really against every notion of God's presence in our lives that we've been conditioned to think about. So that's not what it is saying. It's not that divine blessings are uncommon. They're anything but. But what is extraordinarily uncommon, incredibly so, is our perception of it. That Swami Kriyananda said that God's grace is like sunshine on the side of a building, that it's shining equally, but only 1 or 2 windows are open to let it in. And so when you look at it that way, and the whole thing turns around today's topic is how devotees rise. And again, it's a kind of an interesting topic because you might think, well, the whole point of being a devotee is that I don't fall. What's this whole thing about how devotees rise? I fell down, I became a devotee, and now I'm secure. There's no such thing as how devotees rise. It's no longer a topic for my consideration. Yes and no. Yes, because as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that my devotee is never lost. There is that eternal promise, but in the minutiae of daily life and a million incarnations, reality is slightly different. I remember once, about maybe 9 years ago, right around this time, my mom fell very, very sick. She was around 97 at the time, and there's, the writing was on the wall. She was nearing the end of her days, and she summoned me and my sister. Both of us live here. She summoned us back, and we went back, and what followed was about 3-4 weeks of hospitalization, and every day was different. Every day was difficult. Those are few that have been through those kinds of near end of life situations, you know that there is always a surprise every morning. And we went through all of that. I had a strong meditation practice. And I'll tell you why I mentioned that in a moment. And she came back from the hospital. She was still quite sick. And one day when we went back to the doctor for a checkup, he said, well, she has a superbug. You know what a superbug is? It's an infection that doesn't respond to antibiotics. So they said, we've been treating her with antibiotics for the last 10 days, and it's not responding at all. And what you guys need to do is get her back into the hospital, because you know how they deal with superbugs? This whole thing is kind of new to me. There is a whole bunch of antibiotics out there that have been invented. Some of them are good, that are approved for regular use by human beings, and some of them are very bad. And the way they found out what was good and what was bad, of course, was they tried it out and bad things happened. And much of this happened in the 50s, probably in the early 60s, and there is a bunch of bad antibiotics. They are not bad in the sense they don't kill the bacteria, but they are bad in the sense they cause you bad side effects. Now, the irony is the bacteria have become resistant to the good antibiotics. And that's what causes superbugs. So they've become resistant. So when you come up with a superbug, one of the lines of treatment, by no means the only one of the lines of treatment is to treat you with these bad, banned antibiotics, because the bugs don't know them. They're not familiar. So there is the hope that they will respond. And of course, it comes with bad side effects. But in addition, they told us that my mom needed to, the antibiotics need to be given intravenously, but through a central IV, meaning they put the needle right here into this big vein that goes right into the heart. So she needed to be hospitalized. My mom was very, very courageous, but she did not like going back to the hospital. She didn't say, don't take me back, but she really said, I'd prefer not to go back. And so there's 4 of us, siblings, and 3 of us were kind of into pros and cons and researching the superbug and the bad antibiotics and central IV, and really got into, let me do this type A kind of mode of taking ownership. And that's not a bad thing, in time of crisis, you got to do that. And my brother, he kind of stopped us at some point, said, maybe God is trying to tell us something. And the way he said it, definitely it landed in the right place for me. And then it kind of occurred to all of us that, hey, maybe taking her back to the hospital is not the right thing. So we talked to the doctor, and he was wagging his fingers at us and said, well, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But you just have to monitor, look for these symptoms every day. And if it happens, you got to bring her back. Otherwise, I cannot guarantee anything. So we didn't take her to the hospital. Mom was happy. And I remember going down every morning and saying, okay, Mom, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? And then my other siblings did that throughout the day. And 10 days later, she kicked out the superbug from her system. And it's very important at the time for her to live for another year. She did pass after a year, but there's some karmic reasons why we realize now that she had to live. Where I'm going with this was, even in crises like that, God's guidance is available. It's just that amongst the 4 of us, 3 of us really, it's not so much we were not willing to listen to it. How could you not be willing? That's a silly thing to say. But it's more that there was something that needed to happen in the portals of the mind and the heart that opened up to that listening. You had to be in that space of listening. It wasn't enough that, now I'll tell you why I said I had a strong meditation practice. That wasn't enough. You just cannot sit in the meditation cushion in the morning, even if it's for 2 hours in the morning and 2 in the evening, because there is still 22 hours of opportunity to be subconscious. You see, so there is something that needs to be done during the rest of the day. Otherwise, the devotee falls until he or she meditates again and kind of comes back to take it like a whale breaching and taking another breath of air and then going back down again. There is, in my language, Kannada, there is a very wonderful poem written to God. And it's in that poem, the devotee is talking to God, and he's trying to write a contract, a kind of a contract between him and God. And some of the lines of the poem, it translates like this. He says, Lord, I'm going to promise to do a few things, but you got to promise to do a few things. And here are the terms and conditions. And he says, Lord, I'm going to promise to associate with other God-minded people. But you got to promise to get me away from all the evil people that I've already associated with. I can only do half of it. You got to do the other half. And then the next line item in that contract says, Lord, I'm going to dedicate my thoughts and actions and aspirations to you, but you have to fix my mind on you. Otherwise, I can't do that. That's your part. And he says, I'm going to surrender to you. That I'll promise to do, but you got to give me your grace. Otherwise, what's the point of surrender? So it establishes this contract. It's a beautiful poem. But the spiritual life is like that. It's not about, devotees kind of come in 2 flavors. One flavor of devotees, I'm a sinner, I shall go forth and try not to sin. I'll meditate every day. I'll have good thoughts every day. If something bad happens, it's always my fault. I am sorry, Lord. I'll try this again. There is all this I am sorry kind of thing. The second type of devotee is, I'm your devotee. I'll sit back, relax, enjoy the flight. You help me. You take care of all of my problems. So there is the super active or the super passive devotee. Devotee, devotion, the word for that in Sanskrit is bhakti. And you know what bhakti means, the word bhakti? It means separation. That's a surprising meaning, isn't it? The reason it means that is we go through life thinking, I am the cause of everything. I achieved this, or I screwed up with this. And then there begins to dawn, after who knows how many million lifetimes, a consciousness that maybe it's not me. Maybe it's you that's doing this. Maybe it's you behind this. So when that separation happens, that's why it's separation, that you kind of begin to say, maybe it's you. In that separation is the dawning of eventual union. But it's got to start with that. It's not me, it's you. So that's the life of the devotee. And how does it feel to live a life like that? It's very, very impractical on the face of it. And I'll show you how impractical it is. It's ridiculously impractical to live like that on the face of it. And then I'll tell you why it's not impractical, but so bear with me. In the autobiography of a yogi, there is an incident of Yogananda speaking publicly. It's 1920, and probably July or August, and he has boarded an ocean liner called the City of Sparta. Now, the City of Sparta, there's something interesting about that. The First World War had ended approximately 2 years before that. And there was a moratorium on all civilian traffic across the ocean since 1914. And it had just resumed in the summer of 1920. And City of Sparta was the first ocean liner to depart India to go anywhere for 6 years. So there was a lot of demand for all the berths in there, and Yogananda was invited to speak at a Boston Spiritual Conference of Religions. And it took about a month and a half, I think, for it to cross 3 oceans and eventually get to Boston. And while in there, some people realized that here is a wise man from India, and if you find a wise man from India or from anywhere else amidst you, and you got nothing better to do for a month and a half, what do? You ask that wise man to give a speech. That's how things work. So now I'm going to read from you this incident. Swami Yogananda, he said, with the first of many quaint pronunciations by which I was later to hear my name spoken by the Americans. Please favor the passengers with a lecture next Thursday night. I think we would all benefit by a talk on the battle of life and how to fight it. So he got asked this. Alas, Yogananda says, I had to fight a battle of my own life. I discovered Wednesday, one day before, desperately trying to organize my ideas into a lecture in English, I finally abandoned all preparations. My thoughts, like a wild colt eyeing a saddle, refused my cooperation with the laws of English grammar. Pick up the nuance here. He's not saying he doesn't have any ideas. He's not even saying he's unable to articulate them. He just cannot do it in proper English and still be perceived as wise. That's his problem. Okay? Fully trusting in Master's past assurances, he's referring to Sri Yukteswar. Sri Yukteswar had told him repeatedly over the last 10 years that his job is to speak in English to Americans and Yogananda always said, but Master, I can speak Bengali, but English is too weird, I can't do this. And Sri Yukteswar said, well, Babaji said, you got this mission, you will speak English, don't worry. So that's the context of this. Okay. Fully trusting in Master's past assurances, however, I appeared before my Thursday audience in the salon of the steamer. No eloquence rose to my lips. Speechlessly, I stood before the assemblage. After an endurance contest lasting 10 minutes, this is what you got to vision. He's standing here. He's having a tussle with the English language, overflowing with superconscious ideas. And he said, God, this is your problem. You take care of it because I told you this is going to happen, but you told me it wouldn't. So here I am standing, and he stands there for 10 minutes waiting for an inspiration to come. The audience realized my predicament and began to laugh. The situation was not funny to me at the moment. Indignantly, I sent a prayer to Master. The life of a devotee. You see, it's not that indignantly I fake some cough and say I can't speak or work around the situation. You just stick with it. Said, indignantly, I sent a prayer to Master. You can speak. His voice sounded instantly within my consciousness. My thoughts fell at once into a friendly relationship with the English language. 45 minutes later, the audience was still attentive. Look at the low bar he had set for himself at this point. The audience was still attentive. The talk won me a number of invitations to lecture before various groups in America. I never could remember afterward a word I had spoken. By discreet inquiry, I learned from a number of passengers you gave an inspiring lecture in stirring and correct English. That is still what Master was aiming for, correct English. At this delightful news, I humbly thanked my Guru for his timely help, realizing anew that he was ever with me, setting at naught all barriers of time and space. This is the life of a devotee, is that your surrender has to be for real. That you either seek the help of God or you don't. And when you do, it comes with it its own set of oddities, but you've got to stick through it. So these things that I pointed out, the faith that it is going to work, and the demand when it is not working, and the ability to listen to the answer to your demand. This is the nature of our contract with God when we step on the spiritual path. So it is in a sense not a path for the faint-hearted, and this is why the devotee falls, is while we meditate, we do the sadhana, the other part of it, the courage that is needed to jump off the cliff and say, I will be held afloat, and listening to that answer when it comes. That's the key. And this is why I said this is ridiculously impractical. Right? I was thinking about this talk, and all through yesterday saying, wow, am I able to do what Yogananda did? Can I, there were some issues I had in how to frame this talk and so on. And I was thinking, should I just do my preparation and just go up here and speak? Or not, and just stand in front of you for 10 minutes? I don't know. That takes a level of courage that I don't yet have. But there is a reason why Yogananda wrote this in the autobiography of a yogi, is to set the bar that way. So, and the question is, how do we work our way to the extraordinary courage required to surrender? How do we do that? And here are a few practical tips that Yogananda gives us, and I've also found them very useful over the years. The first is, there is The first is to meditate. And the reason to meditate, there are many reasons, but the biggest reason is to see what it feels like when you get out of day-to-day restlessness and into that place where God might appear. So if you've meditated and you have that feeling of peace or calmness or that joy or a sudden sense of empowerment saying, oh, I'm more than equal to whatever life can throw at me, go for it, bring it on. If you have that feeling, you see, that's it. That's what God feels like. In its full expression, it is much, much more of the same. There is no other aspect to it other than this feeling that you get. That's the beauty of meditation. That's why Yogananda defined meditation as communing with God. Communing means meeting, getting to know, hi, how are you? That you might glimpse just a teeny bit here, but just more of it is what God's presence is. So that's the beauty. The importance of meditation is to do that every day and hold on to that feeling. That's why it's important to go beyond technique and stay there. But the second one, this is often ignored. When you get that feeling, that deep sense of peace, that sense of separation from the body, whatever it is for you, all of you will get it, guaranteed, because we are all built the same way, is to acknowledge it and say, oh my goodness, I just saw you, Lord. That, meaning send a prayer of gratitude saying, I just felt you. Next time, maybe, please, can I feel a little bit more? That kind of thing. Why you need to acknowledge it to yourself is that's what makes it real. Otherwise, the miracles are happening around us all the time, except we don't pay attention to it. So it begins by awareness and acknowledging, this was the presence of God. Thank you. May I please have more of it tomorrow? And it gets you used to the state of mind where God is coming. You will recognize it more and more. It's very subtle. It kind of comes, and if you move your attention even a little bit, it just goes away. So you need to learn more and more to recognize it. So that is the second part. And the third one is to train your mind to remember that God is always with you. That bhakti. Maybe it's you, maybe it's not me. I think that's a trainable skill. Just like anything else, it's a trainable skill. You could do, I had, when I was doing my PhD in yoga, my advisor, he was a yogi. And at the time, he was around 80 years old. And he used to work for probably 18 to 20 hours a day, for sure, because I had spent entire days with him during those times. And he did an unusual thing. Maybe once every hour during his very, very busy day, he'd just, it'd be in a meeting or whatever, he'd just sit, close his eyes. And then about a half a minute later, he'd come back. And we thought, here's an 80-year-old man, so every now and then he's taking a nap. Maybe he was every now and then, but by and large, that wasn't the case. His sister told me, no, that's not what he does. She said that every now and then he goes back to his center and he refreshes his power. Okay? And then I knew to look for it. And that's the thing, see, every now and then during the day, go back to God. This is the vibrationless reflection. This is the one place in our physical form which is non-dual. So there is a special power to focusing here rather than here or here or here or here, anywhere. It's a special power to focusing here. So every now and then, go back there. And it can be quite transforming. Maybe set a timer and do that every hour, just for a half a minute. Very, very powerful. Japa is another way, constantly in the background chanting the name of God. The another one is really invite God into day-to-day situations. There is no situation that is too pedestrian for God's help. Like I said in the prayer today that came from Whispers from Eternity, that was in the morning during purification, like, remove the static of indifference. It's the indifference that keeps us away from God. So talking to God all the time, what should I do about this? I've been asking you this for 20 years now, you still haven't shown me the way. What's going on here? That kind of loving, but it's not wrong to be entitled in front of God, because that is the only entitlement we have in life, is realizing our true nature. So establishing that kind of a relationship. So those things will help us to recognize that state of consciousness when a blessing is about to arrive, because it is going to come. So let me end this with an excerpt from one of Yogananda's prayers. No matter where I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on thee, and in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be, God, God, God. Om Shanti. Amen.
Reading from Whispers from Eternity. Teach me to perform every work only to please thee. Whoops, sorry, wrong one. Bless me that I may perceive thee through the windows of all activities. Bless me that I may perceive thee through the window of all joyous activities. Look upon me and cheer me always as I engage in my daily duties. Let my every action, whether waking, sleeping, or dreaming, be sprayed by the fountain of thy presence.